The signal came from space on a quiet Tuesday morning. Dr. Kim sat at his desk in Daejeon Observatory, eyes fixed on his monitor. The pattern of radio waves wasn't random. It repeated with perfect precision, something nature never did. "This can't be right," he whispered, adjusting his glasses. He ran the analysis again. Same result. His hands trembled as he reached for his phone. Within an hour, his small office was packed with colleagues, all staring at the same data with wide eyes. By evening, observatories across the globe had confirmed his discovery. Humanity had received its first message from an alien civilization. The world changed overnight. News broadcasts showed nothing else. Religious leaders held emergency meetings. Stock markets fluctuated wildly. And in every scientific institution on Earth, experts worked around the clock to decode the message. It took 2 weeks. The signal contained instructions for building a communication device, one far more advanced than anything humans had created. Teams in 7 countries built it simultaneously, racing against each other. The Korean team finished first. When they activated the device, a holographic figure appeared in their laboratory. It called itself an ambassador from the Taeso Collective. The alien looked almost human. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, but with silvery skin that seemed to shimmer like liquid metal. Its voice was melodious, translated perfectly into every human language. "We come as friends," the Taeso ambassador announced. "Our civilization has existed for 50,000 years. We wish to share our knowledge with your species." President Park addressed the world the next day, standing alongside the holographic visitor. "This is humanity's greatest moment," he declared. "The beginning of a new era of peace and advancement." The Taeso promised medical technology that could cure any disease, energy systems that would end pollution, faster than light travel, the solutions to problems humans had struggled with for centuries. All they asked for in return was permission to establish cultural exchange centers in major cities. Most people celebrated. Some remained cautious. A few protested, warning of hidden dangers. But their voices were drowned out by excitement and hope. The first Taeso ships arrived 3 months later. Massive silver vessels, elegant and curved, hovering silently above Earth's major cities. From each ship descended smaller craft carrying Taeso diplomats and scientists. They brought gifts, small devices that could purify water, generate electricity, or heal minor wounds. Proof of their advanced technology and good intentions. Dr. Kim was invited to the Seoul welcome ceremony. He stood in the crowd as the alien delegation met with government officials. Something bothered him about their perfect smiles, their too smooth movements. But he pushed his concerns aside. This was what humanity had dreamed of for generations. That night, as he worked late in his office, analyzing more signals from space, Dr. Kim noticed something strange. More Taeso ships were arriving, many more than announced. They positioned themselves in high orbit, forming a pattern around Earth. He immediately called his government contact but couldn't get through. All lines were busy. He tried sending emails, text messages. Nothing worked. Communication systems were failing worldwide. The attack began at dawn. The first energy beam struck Seoul's city center, vaporizing a 5-block radius instantly. Before anyone could react, similar beams hit New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, and dozens of other major cities simultaneously. Dr. Kim watched from his observatory on the outskirts of Daejeon as Seoul burned. The peaceful alien visitors had revealed their true purpose. June had been inspecting a new military installation 20 miles outside Seoul when the attack began. As a military engineer, he understood immediately what was happening. He ordered his team into the underground bunker just moments before the shockwave hit. When they emerged hours later, the world had changed again. The sky was dark with smoke and ash. Emergency broadcasts reported devastation worldwide. The Taeso had struck with perfect coordination, targeting government centers, military bases, and population hubs. June commandeered a vehicle and drove toward Seoul. He needed to find his family. What he found instead was hell. The beautiful city where he had grown up was now a smoldering crater. Buildings that had stood for decades were reduced to twisted metal and dust. Bodies lined the streets, those who had survived the initial blast only to die in the fires that followed. Standing on a hill overlooking what remained of Seoul, Jun watched Taeso ships descending through the smoke. Smaller craft deployed alien soldiers who moved with mechanical precision, securing the ruins. They weren't killing survivors. They were rounding them up. A Taeso announcement broadcast on all remaining channels explained their actions. Humanity's resources are now property of the collective. Your species has been deemed primitive and inefficient. Those who submit will be preserved in designated areas. Resistance is inadvisable. They spoke as if discussing a minor inconvenience, not the slaughter of millions. June found a young woman hiding in the ruins of a shopping center. She was injured but alive. "They're taking people," she whispered, "loading them onto ships." "Why?" June asked, bandaging her wounded arm with strips torn from his uniform. "Resources," she said, her voice hollow. "I heard one tell another that humans are useful for labor. The rest will be processed to clear space for their colony." Jun helped her to safety, finding a group of survivors hiding in an underground subway station. As night fell, he stood at the entrance, watching alien patrols move through the streets. Their technology was far beyond anything he'd ever seen. Energy weapons, personal shield generators, hover transport. But Jun was an engineer. He understood how things worked, how they could be broken. "They think we're primitive," he told the survivors gathered around him. "They think we'll give up." In the light of a small fire, Jun drew plans on a scrap of paper, a way to disable Taeso shields, a method to disrupt their communications, the beginnings of resistance. "They attacked because they believe we're weak," he said, voice growing stronger with each word. "They'll learn differently." As dawn broke over the ruins of Seoul, Jun made a silent vow, not just to survive, not just to save others, but to make the Taeso regret the day they ever discovered Earth. The first step of humanity's transformation had begun. 3 months after the initial attack, Earth belonged to the Taeso. Their control zones covered every continent, marked by tall silver towers that projected energy fields visible as shimmering domes in the sky. Inside these zones, alien administrators cataloged human survivors, sorting them into labor groups. Outside, hunts continued for those who had escaped. Jun moved through the darkness, keeping low to the ground. 6 other fighters followed him, their faces streaked with dirt for camouflage. They approached the edge of the Seoul control zone, where the energy barrier hummed with deadly power. "Remember," Jun whispered, 15 seconds between patrol passes. "Move fast and stay silent." They waited until the Taeso patrol hovered past, their silver discs gliding silently above the ground. The moment the aliens turned the corner, Jun's team sprinted across the open space to the barrier's edge. Min, the youngest of the group, placed a small device against the energy field. It was Jun's creation, a resonator that temporarily matched the barrier's frequency, creating a small passage. One by one, they slipped through. Inside the zone, the devastation of Seoul had been cleaned up with frightening efficiency. Streets were clear of debris. New structures, sleek and silver like the Taeso themselves, rose from the ruins. And everywhere, humans worked under alien supervision, their movements slow with exhaustion and defeat. Jun's team moved through the shadows toward their target, a small Taeso supply depot. They needed medicine, food, and most importantly, any technology they could steal. 30 seconds, Jun told them as they reached the depot's outer wall. In and out. The raid was quick and precise. While 2 team members grabbed medical supplies and food packs, Jun and Min focused on the technology. They grabbed communication devices, a small energy weapon, and most valuable, a damaged Taeso combat suit. Alarms sounded just as they finished. As they fled back toward the barrier, energy blasts scorched the ground around them. Su Bin, carrying the heavy combat suit, stumbled and fell. June turned back, helping him up. "Leave it," Su Bin gasped. "No," June insisted, shouldering the burden. "This is what we came for." They escaped through their temporary gap in the barrier, losing the Teso patrols in the ruins outside the control zone. By dawn, they reached their hideout, an old bunker built during previous human wars, now serving a purpose its creators never imagined. Colonel Han waited for them. Once commander of South Korea's elite special forces, he now led what remained of the country's military resistance. His face showed relief when they entered. "We were about to send a search party," he said, inspecting their haul. When he saw the combat suit, his eyes widened. "You actually got one." "Damaged, but mostly intact," Jun replied, dropping to the floor in exhaustion. Han immediately sent for Dr. Park. She arrived minutes later, eyes bright despite the dark circles beneath them that spoke of sleepless nights. Once a leading neuroscientist at Seoul National University, she now directed all her knowledge toward understanding alien technology. "Is this what I think it is?" she asked, approaching the combat suit with reverence. "It's yours now," Jun told her. "Find us a weakness." In the days that followed, Dr. Park rarely left her makeshift lab. The bunker buzzed with new energy as word spread of their prize. If they could understand how Teso technology worked, perhaps they could find a way to fight back. Meanwhile, Jun met with Colonel Han to plan their next move. "We're not alone anymore," Han told him, pointing to a crude map spread across the table. "Resistance cells have formed across the globe. London, Cairo, Mumbai, Sydney, all reporting successful strikes against Teso operations." "How are we communicating?" Jun asked. The aliens had destroyed all human satellite systems in their first attack. "Old technology," Han said with a smile. "Radio. Morse code. Methods the Teso consider too primitive to monitor closely." Reports from around the world painted a consistent picture. The Teso were overwhelming in direct confrontation, but strangely vulnerable to guerrilla tactics. Their responses followed predictable patterns. They always used the same procedures, the same formations, regardless of the situation. "They lack creativity," Han observed. "They rely on superior technology, not adaptability." Jun led more raids, each time testing different approaches. His team planted explosives along patrol routes, not to kill but to observe how the Teso responded. They disrupted supply lines not to gain resources, but to see how the aliens adjusted their logistics. Each time, the pattern was the same. The Teso followed preset protocols. They never improvised. 2 weeks after stealing the combat suit, Dr. Park called Jun and Han to her lab. Her face showed the triumph of a breakthrough. "The suit interfaces directly with Teso nervous systems," she explained, pointing to the interior lining with its web of fine silvery threads. "But the connection depends on a specific frequency range." She activated a small device she had built. It emitted a high-pitched tone that made Jun wince. "What happens when a Teso is exposed to this?" Han asked. "Based on my analysis, it should disrupt their neural patterns. Not harmful, but disorienting, like static in their brains." Her eyes gleamed. "Their weapons and defensive systems use the same frequency for coordination." For the first time since the invasion, Jun felt something like hope. "Can you make more of these devices?" "With the right components, yes. But they'll have limited range, maybe 50 meters. "That's enough," Jun said. "We'll get close." They planned their first offensive strike carefully. The target was a small Teso outpost that monitored human movement outside the control zone. 12 aliens staffed it, with automated defenses doing most of the work. Jun led the attack at night. 20 fighters approached from different directions, each carrying one of Dr. Park's disruptors. When they were in position, Jun gave the signal. All devices activated at once. The effect was immediate. The automated defenses shut down. The Teso guards stumbled, their movements suddenly clumsy. Some dropped their weapons. Others fell to their knees, hands clutching at their helmets. The human fighters swarmed the outpost, capturing all 12 aliens alive. They secured the facility within minutes, with no casualties on either side. As dawn broke, June stood at the outpost's command center, watching the sun rise over a small but significant victory. The captured TESO had been secured in a holding area, their technology confiscated for study. "This is just the beginning," Colonel Han said, joining him. "Dr. Park is already working on a larger version of the disruptor." "And the prisoners?" June asked. "First aliens captured since the invasion," Han replied. "We'll learn everything we can from them." Word of their success spread through resistance networks worldwide. Soon, similar strikes occurred in other regions, using Dr. Park's frequency disruption technology. For the first time, humans were fighting back effectively. The TESO, faced with unexpected resistance, responded the only way they knew how, with overwhelming force. They doubled patrols, increased the energy output of their barriers, and executed public punishments of any humans suspected of aiding the resistance. But their rigid tactics remained unchanged, and humanity, fighting for survival, grew more creative by the day. The war had truly begun. The rain fell in sheets as June crawled through mud toward the TESO checkpoint. 5 other fighters followed, each carrying a small pack. Inside each pack was Dr. Park's newest creation, the neural disruptor, now smaller but 10 times more powerful than the first version. "Remember," June whispered, "we're not here to fight. Plant the devices and withdraw." 6 months of guerrilla warfare had changed June. His face was thinner, eyes harder. A scar ran from his left temple to jaw, a reminder of a raid that had almost killed him. But his mind remained sharp, focused on the single goal that drove him forward each day: freeing Earth. The checkpoint guarded the southern entrance to Busan, once Korea's busiest port city, now a TESO processing center. Beyond the checkpoint lay the command hub that controlled all TESO operations in the region. Lightning flashed, illuminating the silver shapes of TESO guards. Their armor glistened in the rain as they stood motionless, seemingly unbothered by the storm. The aliens never showed discomfort from Earth's environment. They never showed emotion at all. Jun gave the signal. His team split into pairs, approaching the checkpoint from 3 directions. They placed the small disruptors at precise intervals, burying them in the mud where TESO sensors wouldn't detect them. As they retreated to their observation point on a nearby hill, Jun activated the remote trigger. Nothing visible happened, but he knew the devices were now emitting the frequency Dr. Park had discovered, the one that interfered with TESO neural systems. "Busan team in position," he spoke into an old radio handset. "Disruptors active." Across the globe, similar messages were being transmitted in what remained of New Delhi, Cairo, Sydney, Rio de Janeiro, and dozens of other locations. Resistance fighters prepared for the first coordinated global attack against the invaders. The coordination was possible thanks to Hyun, a quiet young woman who had been a communications engineer before the invasion. She had created a network using salvaged radio equipment and pre-invasion satellites the TESO had overlooked. Her system wasn't perfect. Messages were delayed, sometimes garbled, but it allowed resistance cells to plan together for the first time. "All teams reporting ready," came Hyun's voice through the radio. "Commence operation on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." Jun led his team down the hill toward the checkpoint. Normally, approaching armed TESO guards would be suicide. But these guards were no longer functioning properly. They moved erratically, their silver forms twitching. Some had dropped their weapons. Others fired wildly into the air. The human fighters swept through the checkpoint without firing a shot. They simply walked past the disoriented aliens and continued toward the command hub. Inside the facility, chaos reigned. TESO officers stumbled through hallways, unable to coordinate their movements. Their neural interfaces, usually allowing instantaneous communication, were now broadcasting painful static directly into their brains. Jun's team secured the control center within minutes. They captured the command staff alive. These TASO officers would provide valuable intelligence. Then they activated the hub's communication system. "Attention all TASO forces in Busan." Jum spoke in the alien's own language, words he had learned from captured invaders. "Your neural network has been compromised. Your command structure is broken. Withdraw from the city or face destruction." It wasn't an idle threat. Dr. Park had discovered that prolonged exposure to the disruptor frequency caused permanent damage to TASO neural systems. The aliens had a choice: retreat or suffer brain death. Similar ultimatums were being delivered in cities worldwide. And across the globe, the TASO made the same decision: tactical withdrawal. By sunrise, Busan was free. Human fighters escorted confused TASO soldiers to their ships at the harbor. The massive alien vessels rose into the sky, their silver hulls catching the morning light as they retreated to orbital positions. June stood on the docks, watching the flagship, a vessel the size of 3 aircraft carriers, disappear into the clouds. The sight was broadcast through Hyun's network to resistance cells everywhere. "This is just one city," Colonel Han said, joining June at the harbor. "They'll be back with reinforcements." "Let them come," Jun replied. "We'll be ready." In their orbital stations, the TASO command struggled to understand their defeat. Species Commander Call reviewed reports from Earth with growing concern. The humans were not behaving as expected. The predictive models indicated they would surrender after major population centers were destroyed. Call's second-in-command observed. "Yet they continue to resist." "More than resist," Call replied. "They have adapted. They have weaponized our own technology against us." This was unprecedented in the collective's 50,000 years of expansion. Species that couldn't match TASO technology always surrendered or perished. None had ever turned the collective's own systems against them. Cal made the decision to request reinforcements from the collective homeworld. The message would take weeks to reach TASO Prime, and the response would take equally long to return. Until then, they would need to contain the human resistance with available forces. But containment proved impossible. In the days following Busan's liberation, resistance forces seized control of more cities: Osaka, Vancouver, Cape Town. Each victory followed the same pattern: neural disruptors deployed, command centers captured, TASO forces given the choice between withdrawal and neural death. Dr. Park continued to improve her technology. The third generation of disruptors could affect TASO ships in low orbit, forcing them to maintain distance from liberated areas. "The disruptors won't win the war alone," she explained to June and Colonel Han. "The TASO are already working on countermeasures. We need something more." "What do you suggest?" Han asked. "We need their ships," she said simply. "Not just to study, to use." The plan was audacious: capture a TASO transport intact, with its propulsion system functioning. Study it, replicate it, and give humanity the ability to take the fight beyond Earth. The opportunity came when a damaged TASO vessel made an emergency landing near the outskirts of liberated Busan. The ship, smaller than their massive carriers, but still the size of a human aircraft, had been struck by lightning during a storm, a freak accident that had partially disabled its systems. June led the capture team. 20 fighters surrounded the landing site, disruptors activated before the ship touched down. When the hatch opened, the TASO crew emerged already disoriented, unable to offer resistance. The captured ship was immediately transported to a secure facility beneath the ruins of Busan's university. There, Dr. Park assembled a team of the brightest remaining scientific minds. "We have 30 days before the TASO reinforcements arrive," she told them. 30 days to understand technology that took them thousands of years to develop. Elsewhere, the war continued. TASO forces, now aware of the disruptor technology, developed partial shielding for their neural systems. They changed tactics, relying less on direct confrontation and more on orbital bombardment of liberated areas. But humans adapted again. Resistance forces moved underground, using tunnel systems to travel between cities. They developed jammers that interfered with TESO targeting systems, making orbital strikes less effective. Month 6 of the occupation became Month 7, then Month 8. The promised TESO reinforcements arrived, a fleet of 50 ships, each larger than any seen before. They took up positions around Earth, preparing for a renewed assault that would crush the human resistance once and for all. Species Commander Kal addressed the planet, his message broadcast on all frequencies. Your resistance has been noted and recorded in collective archives. Your adaptability is impressive, but ultimately futile. The reinforcement fleet carries technology beyond what you have previously encountered. Surrender now and your species will be preserved. Continue to resist and Earth will be sterilized completely. The response came not from government leaders or military commanders, but from ordinary people in liberated cities worldwide. Millions gathered in streets and squares, looking up at the sky where TESO ships loomed. Their answer was simple and unanimous. Never. The second invasion was about to begin. But this time, humanity was ready. The abandoned Daejeon Research Facility had once been Korea's premier space technology center. Now it served a purpose its builders never imagined. Deep beneath the surface, in reinforced chambers designed to test rocket engines, Dr. Kim and Jun stood before their creation. The ship looked wrong. Its sleek TESO design had been modified with human additions that seemed crude by comparison. Extra control systems, backup power units, and manual override mechanisms that the aliens would have considered primitive. The vessel was a hybrid of two worlds, beautiful and strange. Will it work? Colonel Han asked, running his hand along the hull. After a year of war, he looked decades older. His hair had gone completely gray. In theory, Dr. Kim replied. He had lost weight during the occupation, his clothes hanging loose on his frame, but his eyes remained sharp and focused. The drive principles are sound. The TESO use a form of space folding that's actually simpler than we expected. Simpler doesn't mean safer, Jun noted. As the test pilot, he would be the one risking his life in the experimental craft. If the calculations are wrong, then you'll be spread across several dimensions, Dr. Kim finished. Yes, I know. They had been working on the ship for 3 months, ever since Dr. Park's team had decoded the basics of TESO propulsion technology. While the resistance fought to hold liberated territories against the reinforced alien fleet, scientists around the world had collaborated on this single project, humanity's ticket to the stars. The launch was scheduled for dawn. As darkness fell, Jun sat alone in the pilot's chamber, familiarizing himself with the controls one final time. The hybrid interface system responded to both touch and thought, a compromise between TESO neural technology and human mechanical reliability. Min found him there, lost in concentration. Once his subordinate, she now commanded her own resistance cell. The year of fighting had hardened her, left a permanent furrow between her brows, but hadn't diminished her spirit. Tomorrow you make history, she said, sitting beside him. Jun shook his head. If it works, we all make history. If it doesn't, I become a cautionary tale. It will work, she insisted. And when it does, I want to be on the next ship. We need to take the fight to them. Jun looked at her with surprise. You've been thinking about this, haven't you? Earth isn't enough anymore. Not if we want to survive. Her eyes burned with intensity. They came from the stars to destroy us. We need to make sure they never try again. At dawn, the underground hangar opened, revealing a patch of sky still dark with stars. The ship, named Hope, in 27 human languages inscribed on its hull, rose silently into the air, its TESO gravitic drives functioning perfectly. Jun felt strangely calm as Earth fell away beneath him. The neural interface fed information directly to his mind. Altitude, velocity, power levels, while his hands rested on conventional controls. The hybrid system worked just as they had designed. When he reached orbit, he saw the TESO blockade, dozens of massive warships positioned to prevent anything from leaving or entering Earth's atmosphere. They immediately detected his vessel. Unidentified craft. Came the TESO communication. You have entered restricted space. Identify immediately or be destroyed. Jum didn't respond. Instead, he activated the fold drive. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality itself appeared to bend. Stars stretched into lines of light. Jum felt a pressure that wasn't physical, more like his consciousness was being squeezed through a narrow opening. When the sensation passed, Earth and its TESO blockade were gone. Mars hung before him, red and beautiful. It worked, he whispered, then laughed with pure joy. It worked. He activated the communication system linked to Earth's resistance network. Hope to base. FTL jump successful. I'm at Mars. Repeat, I have reached Mars. The cheers that erupted in the Dajan facility were echoed in resistance bases worldwide. Humanity had taken its first step into the galaxy. But Jum's mission wasn't just a test flight. As he orbited Mars, his sensors detected what they were looking for: a TESO outpost on the planet's surface. The aliens had established supply depots and communication relays throughout the solar system, never imagining humans could reach them. The outpost was small, with minimal defenses. The TESO had never considered the need to protect their rear positions from the primitives they were conquering. June landed Hope 1 kilometer from the facility. Wearing a pressure suit modified from TESO designs, he approached on foot. The neural disruptor he carried was the latest model, effective at twice the range of the original. The TESO never saw him coming. When the disruptor activated, the 5 aliens staffing the outpost collapsed in confusion. June secured them quickly, then accessed their communication system. Attention TESO command. He broadcast on their frequencies. This is Commander June of Earth. Mars is now under human control. This is just the beginning. He returned to Earth a hero, bringing with him both TESO prisoners and data downloaded from their systems, including navigational charts for the entire sector. Within a month, 10 more ships were completed. Dr. Kim had refined the design, making them faster and more reliable. Each could carry 20 soldiers and their equipment. Min was given command of the first attack squadron. Standing before her crew, she felt the weight of history on her shoulders. Today we take the war to the enemy, she told them. Not for revenge, but for survival. The TESO must learn that attacking Earth was their greatest mistake. Their first target was a TESO colony on Titan, Saturn's largest moon. The alien settlement there supported mining operations that extracted resources for the war effort. It was lightly defended, with only a small security force. Min's squadron emerged from fold space directly above the colony. Before the TESO could react, human troops had deployed, disruptors active. The battle lasted less than an hour. Standing in the captured command center, Min addressed the TESO administrator. You have a ship, she told the alien. Take your people and go. Tell your leaders what happened here. Tell them humans are coming. You cannot defeat the collective, the administrator replied. Its voice was flat, emotionless despite its defeat. We span 1,000 worlds. Then we'll free 1,000 worlds, Min answered. Starting with this one. Over the next 3 months, human ships struck TESO outposts throughout the solar system. Jupiter's moons, the asteroid belt, even distant Pluto, all were cleared of alien presence. Each time, survivors were allowed to flee, carrying tales of defeat back to TESO command. The collective, for the first time in its long history, found itself on the defensive. Species Commander Call faced the unthinkable: withdrawal from a target world that should have been easily conquered. The humans have achieved space travel using our own technology, he reported to the collective leadership. They are attacking our supply lines and communication hubs. They learn and adapt at an unprecedented rate. The leadership's response was typical of their rigid thinking: increase forces, overwhelm them with superior numbers. But Kal had developed something rare among TESO: doubt. Additional forces may not be sufficient. The humans do not fight as expected. They are unpredictable. Even as this debate continued, Min led humanity's first interstellar attack. Using captured navigational data, her squadron jumped to Proxima Centauri, where the TESO maintained a forward base. The aliens there had no warning. One moment they were conducting routine operations. The next, human ships appeared in their skies. Min's approach had evolved beyond simple military tactics. Before attacking, she broadcast a message to the TESO base. "You have 1 hour to evacuate all personnel. We have no desire to kill, only to reclaim what is ours and ensure our future safety. Those who remain will be considered combatants." Most TESO officers chose evacuation, unable to comprehend fighting an enemy that offered mercy, a concept foreign to their culture. Those who stayed fought bravely, but ineffectively against human forces using their own technology against them. As the last resistance ended, Min gathered the TESO prisoners. "You will be released," she told them. "Return to your homeworld with this message. Earth is not alone. Humanity will not be conquered. Any world where TESO forces threaten intelligent life will see us coming." News of human victory spread beyond the TESO collective. Other species, some long dominated by TESO expansion, watched with growing interest as the primitive humans accomplished what none had thought possible. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was the catalyst. The human flagship *Vengeance* hung in space, its dark hull absorbing starlight. Once a TESO command vessel, humans had rebuilt it with their own modifications. Weapons bristled from positions the original designers never intended. The ship's name was painted in large white letters, visible even from a distance. Inside the main conference chamber, Jun stood beside Ambassador Lee. 2 years of war had changed him completely. The military engineer was now General Jun, commander of Earth's defense forces. His face bore new scars, his eyes carried the weight of countless battles. The TESO delegation entered silently. Unlike their first contact when they appeared almost human, these aliens moved stiffly, their silver skin dulled. Their war against humanity had cost them deeply. Supreme Commander Call led the delegation. Once the architect of Earth's invasion, he now came as a supplicant. He placed a data crystal on the table between them. "The terms of surrender, as demanded," he said, his translator converting the words to human language. "The collective leadership has approved all conditions." Ambassador Lee reviewed the document on a display screen. The terms were indeed harsh. The TESO would provide complete access to their technology. They would remove all forces from Earth's solar system. They would acknowledge humanity's right to colonize any unclaimed world. Most importantly, they would never again take hostile action against humans. "Your leadership agreed to everything?" Jun asked, suspicious. "Without changes." "They had no choice," Call replied simply. "In 2 years, you destroyed 30% of our fleet. You liberated 7 of our colony worlds. You threatened our home system itself." He paused. "The collective has existed for 50,000 years. We have never before surrendered." Lee signed the document. Call pressed his hand to the crystal, confirming his acceptance. Just like that, the war ended. As the TESO delegation departed, Min joined Jun at the viewport. Now an admiral commanding her own fleet, she watched the alien ship disappear into fold space. "Do you trust them?" she asked. "No," Jun replied. "But they fear us. For now, that's enough." Earth began to rebuild. The devastation had been immense. Major cities destroyed, billions dead, ecosystems damaged. But the TESO surrender included reparations. Alien technology accelerated the recovery. New cities rose from the ruins, their architecture a blend of human creativity and TESO efficiency. 6 months after the surrender, the first diplomatic contact came from beyond the TESO collective. A species called the Noor requested a meeting. Their representatives, tall beings with crystalline bodies that refracted light in beautiful patterns, arrived with gifts and cautious curiosity. "We have watched your conflict with the TESO with great interest," the Noor ambassador told Lee. For 10,000 years, no species has successfully resisted them. Many of us suffered under their expansion. We fought for survival, Lee replied, not for conquest. Yet you now possess the most formidable fleet in this sector of the galaxy, the Noor observed. The question all are asking, what will humans do with their victory? It was a fair question. Humanity had gained not just technology, but a fearsome reputation. The species that defeated the undefeatable. The primitives who became conquerors almost overnight. Lee's answer shaped humanity's future. We seek neither domination nor isolation. We want trade, cultural exchange, and mutual security. But make no mistake, we will never again be victims. Within a year, Earth had established diplomatic relations with 12 different species. Some came seeking protection from Tasso influence. Others wanted access to the unique technologies humans had developed during the war, particularly the neural disruptors that had proven so effective. Dr. Park became the head of Earth's new Science Council. Her team worked to understand the technologies of many species, not just the Tasso. Under her leadership, humans advanced more in 5 years than in the previous 500. At a meeting of the newly formed Galactic Council, representatives from 27 species gathered to discuss interstellar law and trade. The Tasso representative found himself seated beside a Noor diplomat. They were nothing, the Tasso said quietly. A primitive species barely capable of reaching their own moon. We should have crushed them easily. What happened? Asked the Noor. They were losing until they weren't, the Tasso replied. Their adaptation rate exceeds any known species. They don't just learn, they transform. They see technology and immediately imagine how to improve it, how to combine it with other technologies, how to use it in ways we never considered. Across the chamber, Ambassador Lee conferred with representatives from 3 other worlds. A trade agreement was being negotiated. Earth would provide security for shipping lanes in exchange for access to rare resources. 10 years after the invasion, humanity had established colonies on 7 worlds, each war names reflecting Earth's history. New Sol, Nova Roma, Second Chance. The colonies featured defensive systems that made them virtually impregnable. Above each world patrolled ships with names that served as reminders. Asterisk, never forget asterisk. Asterisk from the ashes asterisk. Asterisk, survivor asterisk. June, now retired from military service, visited the New Sol colony on its 5th anniversary. The settlement had grown into a proper city, with architecture blending Korean traditions and modern technology. Children born after the war played in parks under an alien sky, knowing only stories of Earth's darkest hours. At a reception that evening, Jun found himself speaking with a young diplomat from a species humans had only recently contacted. I've heard many stories about you, General, the alien said. The hero who led humanity's defense, who captured the first Tasso ship. Jun shook his head. I was just one person doing what was necessary. We all were. Perhaps, the diplomat replied. But your species has developed quite a reputation. There is a saying spreading among worlds. Treat humans with respect, or become a cautionary tale. Later that night, Jun stood on his balcony, looking up at unfamiliar stars. He thought about the journey that had brought humanity here, from the brink of extinction to a force that other species now approached with caution and respect. In the distance, a ship was landing at the spaceport, a trading vessel from another world. Commerce, cultural exchange, peaceful cooperation. These were now the focus of human efforts. But visible in orbit, the silhouettes of defense platforms and patrol ships remained a constant reminder. Humanity had learned perhaps the most important lesson any species could learn. The galaxy was vast and wonderful, filled with possibilities for friendship and growth, but survival sometimes required showing teeth. As dawn broke over New Sol, the light caught the emblem on a passing military vessel. Earth surrounded by stars, and below it the words that had become humanity's unofficial motto. Never again unprepared. The end.